This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
Boring. Boring. Boring.
You gotta do it. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're gonna feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome on and all. Lembit Öpik here on Lembit Öpik Live on Unprecedented TV. How are you doing? How is your Christmas break? Did you eat too much? Did you walk it off? What are you doing for New Year? You can feel free to put those answers into the chat, which you'll find here on the system. For my part, I can't help watching the news. Does that make me dull? Maybe. Also makes me informed. And I wanted to briefly talk today about the ongoing peace talks between America and Ukraine, rather than directly between America and Russia, because America seems to be the power brokers. More specifically, Donald Trump seems to be the power broker. He's the guy who's been talking most intensely with Vladimir Zelensky, who's been visiting the president of the free world in Mar-a-Lago, or is it Mar-a-Lago, down in the south of North America. Always wanted to go there. Maybe I'll get an invite one day. We'll see. Anyway, these talks have been about talks. Donald Trump is determined to try to get peace in Ukraine, not least because he's still got his eye on the Peace Prize, I think. But whatever his motivations, he's been hard at it. And if you're watching this live, you may have seen quite a lot of coverage in the mainstream media about this meeting, or these meetings to be precise, between Donald Trump and his people and Vladimir Zelensky and his people. Well, the bottom line here is that Donald Trump wants to be the person who delivers the peace. He said he'd get it in 24 hours after getting elected to the White House. Well, he was out by at least a year, if we're honest about it. But if he does get peace, that's life saved, and he always returns to that, which is more than we can say about some of the other gormless people involved. There's one of them, somebody who doesn't seem to have a clue what actually peacemaking is about. We'll talk about Keir Starmer and the coalition of the Wallies, as Dr. Marcus Papadopoulos calls in just a moment. But in the meantime, we did have quite a lot of coverage, but that coverage is quite varied. Some say that the process is working, others say the process is not. Well, what's the truth? Normally, we would have Warren Thornton, an investigative journalist, with us. Unfortunately, he's not well at all. So get well soon, Warren. I didn't want to replace him today. This is his spot. So I'll cover my views on this, and you're entitled to make yours known as well. Fundamentally, the way I look at it is that this is schizophrenia in the press. Why? Well, because you get all kinds of headlines like this one. One of them, it's easy to get lost in multi-point plans and spin, but Zelensky's reaction to Trump said it all. This is from Sky. The Mar-a-Lago meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelensky did not materially move things forward, but there was some notable takeaways, and no bust-up like the infamous Oval Office encounter in February. So the position that Sky News is taking is that nothing really went further. They qualified by saying nothing really went back as well, but that's not a huge recommendation, is it? They seem unwilling to accept that Donald Trump has made progress. And what's their reason for saying that? Zelensky's face, the way he looked. I have a very different view to that. I understand that, and I'll explain why I think this is coming out from the mainstream. I understand that there's a motivation for them to play down whatever Donald Trump does. But I think that basing the whole situation just on how Zelensky looked is pretty ridiculous. What I think actually happened is this. I think that Zelensky was summoned to the White House to be told once again what the realities are. And the reality is Zelensky is losing the war. Now, it doesn't matter which side you're on. It doesn't matter if you hate Trump or if you love Putin. It doesn't matter what your view is. Zelensky is losing the war. He's losing land, and he's losing a disproportionately large number of troops as well. And I think that's pretty true, though you wouldn't think so from the way it's being reported in the media. Progress has been quite slow, but something like 1/5 of Ukraine is now under Russian control. So Zelensky hasn't really got any cards. Donald Trump's a realist. He's a businessman and he's a deal maker. He can see that. So he's calling a spade and saying, Zelensky, you're in no position to negotiate, really. You have to take what I negotiate on your behalf. So the first thing I believe is that Zelensky was summoned to be told what he has to do. The second thing I believe is that Donald Trump genuinely has a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin, which you might think is a problem, but I don't think it's a problem, because I think that having two of the three most powerful people in the world, the third being Xi Jinping in China, I mean, two of the three of them getting on really well is good for the world. It makes the world safer. So I would say, first big point, that Zelensky has no power in the situation. And when the media implied that Zelensky's gone there to put his demands forward and so on, at the very best, all he can do is act in an advisory capacity when he talks to Donald Trump. I don't think Trump actually has to take it on anything, really, which is being said to him by Zelensky, just because he doesn't have the firepower. The next thing which I would suggest is going on is all kinds of shenanigans about how the mainstream media justified their previous positions. Here's one. Trump says progress made after Ukraine peace plan talks, but thorny issues remain. Now, I've taken that as one example of weekend coverage, if you're watching this live, but you'll find that all over the place. It seems to me that the mainstream's really quite keen on telling you that not much has happened, that there hasn't been real progress, a little bit like that Sky report that I just showed you. And I think that's inaccurate, it's disingenuous. So here's the reason I think this is happening. I think that the mainstream doesn't like Trump, and they don't want to give him credit for progress. They go on and on and on about his desire for a Nobel Peace Prize, and I haven't got an issue with that. If that motivates him to get a peace where there wasn't one, then fair play to him. But more deeply, I feel this goes right back to the US presidential election, which we now know had doctored fake news on, for example, the British Broadcasting Corporation, that spliced together two bits of Trump's speech, which were almost 50 minutes apart, to make it look like Trump was inciting hatred. If that's the mainstream media, now have to admit that Trump is doing a really good job in terms of getting the peace process moving, that's going to look pretty bad on them. It's amounting to saying that all the stuff that we've been talking about here on Unprecedented TV was right and they were wrong. I'm fairly active on X, and I spend quite a lot of time arguing with people who say, how dare you be a shield for the Russians? How dare you? How much are you being paid by the Russians? Well, all of those people who criticize me, and you're entitled to do it, I'm perfectly willing to have robust debate on social media, but all of those people will have to admit they're wrong. If it turns out that Zelensky will lose land and will not get into NATO and will have to denazify Ukraine, essentially those are the three demands that Vladimir Putin from Russia has been making all the time. He doesn't want to have a militarized Ukraine in NATO, and he doesn't want to have Nazification in Ukraine. So this is the first of the big points I want to make. I'm going to make three today. Zelensky is not in control of his destiny. He's blown it. Like any losing war leader, and I even use the word leader rather dubiously, he's a professional clown. He's a professional comedian, not a professional politician. And it takes decades to get good at politics, and he hasn't had decades to learn it. But if he is a losing war leader, then he has to accept terms given to him. That's how war works. The loser accepts the terms. The loser doesn't set the terms. On to my second point. And my second point is this. It's that if you are really honest about the situation, then you have to start questioning comments like this. Ukraine security guarantees 95% agreed, says Trump. UK president welcomed Ukrainian counterpart at Mar-a-Lago to discuss 20-point ceasefire plan. Now, what does this mean? Donald Trump has made it very clear he's not going to spend money defending Volodymyr Zelensky's failed war effort. He's been very clever. He's actually said he'll sell the arms to Ukraine or anybody who wants to buy them on behalf of Ukraine, but he's not going to spend American money himself. Implications, my friends. That means he's turned Ukraine into a big business for the American military industrial complex. Fair play. Donald Trump is doing exactly what he said on the tin when he got elected. Sure, he didn't get the peace in 24 hours, but he's financially extricated America from the massive cost of this war. That cost is now falling on to Europeans. So when Donald Trump says this, there's something in the detail that we have to be aware of. Trump does not intend to police the peace. And what that means is it's down to Europe. If anyone has to police it at all, it'll be the European Union and the United Kingdom. Not going to be Congo. It's not going to be anyone in Africa, not going to be China. So the guarantee, security guarantee, is not being paid for by the Americans. And this is an issue. The reason it's an issue is because it seems to me that European Union and NATO can't fight itself out of a paper bag now. Mark Rutte, a really weird person in my view, who's in charge of NATO, doesn't inspire the slightest bit of confidence and certainly seems more sociopathic than empathic to the situation in Ukraine. Keir Starmer, who endlessly sticks himself into the limelight in an effort to try to look like he's serious, just looks like a stuttering kind of grey character. I've always thought this video is quite grey, literally, but he makes noise, but he doesn't make sense. Well, people like him are very unlikely, in my view, to be able to win the day when it comes to enforcing the peace. And then you've got others as well, like the Gang of Three, which Starmer somehow thinks makes him look good. There they are. Yeah, there's you got Macron, Starmer, and Zelensky, who endlessly try to put themselves into the frame, but they're not able to do it. So on this point, Donald Trump has done something quite clever. He's made a commitment on behalf of other people. Now, that commitment might still be deliverable, and in the second half of the show, I'll explain why I think that. But fundamentally, you've got people like Farage laughing their heads off from the sidelines, simply because you've not got anybody really of any authority in the current government in the United Kingdom or across the European Union who can deliver this. So on this second point, my belief is that Trump's playing it quite smart by putting enormous pressure on the European Union to do something after America has paid the lion's share of the failed war effort on behalf of Zelensky. What's my third point? My third point is that Vladimir Putin has got all the cards. He is able to fight his way to the result he wants, and he said so. He said, either we get a peaceful deal and you give me the land that you want, or I'll get it anyway by fighting. And let's not pretend that there's any kind of symmetry in what's going on in Ukraine. Ukraine is being smashed to bits by Russia, and they're doing it in quite a clever way. There are some civilian casualties, but when you think about the level of assault, the level of violence going on, it's truly surprising to me that more civilians aren't being killed. Now, civilians being killed at all is pretty tragic, because And I bet you quite a lot of those civilians don't want to have this war in the first place. But it does seem to me, when you've got this violence going on continuously and thousands of deaths a week, and when almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them are actually combatants, that means that Putin knows what he's doing. And he's systematically, albeit slowly, undermining the disheveled, chaotic, conscripted Ukrainian army, which is made up increasingly of people who don't want to be there and have been forced to go to the front, maybe with 2 weeks training, and maybe last 4 hours. It's awful. Now, once again, let's remember, it's only Donald Trump who's talking about all of the death. Nobody else really is. You don't hear it from Macron. You don't hear it from Merz in Germany. You don't hear it from Starmer or von der Leyen in Brussels. You don't hear it from any of those people. You only really hear it from Donald Trump. So we're in a situation now where it's quite obvious that Ukraine has no military way out. Spending billions, and I'll talk about this in the second half of the show, but spending billions on supporting Ukraine simply extends the carnage. Doesn't alter the course of the war. Doesn't change that. And only people who are totally ignorant of basic military strategy, people like the former President Joe Biden, and I think Starmer, have the slightest hope that Zelensky can win. I don't think he can. So, and I'll read some of your comments out after the break. My view is this. Number one, Zelensky went to America to get his instructions. Number two, it's the European Union that's going to have to, and the UK, if we want to, it's going to have to enforce some sort of peacekeeping, which is very problematic for reasons we'll come to. And number three, Vladimir Putin can either get the peace he wants or he can fight for it. And since I think he's losing far fewer people than Ukraine, it's still messy. It's still costing lives, but nothing like the damage which is being done to the primarily male Ukrainian population. Is this something I'm crowing about? Not at all. War is tragic. I would not want to be a Ukrainian man. I would not want to be on the front. I would not want to be forced to go and fight, even if I agreed with Zelensky, and I don't. But if I did, I still wouldn't want to be forced to be in that horrible, freezing, soggy, dangerous front line. And I don't want anyone to glamorize it. War is horrible. It's about people's arms being blown off. It's about people getting brain damage. It's people getting psychologically damaged. It's about people losing their lives. But at this stage, if I was a Ukrainian, I'd say to Zelensky, take Trump's deal, because it's just going to keep getting worse. After the break, I want to talk about options. I want to talk about what we can expect to happen. I'll make some predictions. I often do. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. We'll leave this up in the archive, of course. And also, I'm going to give some pieces of advice, primarily to the coalition of the willing. Before that, let's remember that we have another great warrior here. That's Claire Dyer, the Dire Consequences. She takes local issues and she finds the national significance in them. So she's got some great shows coming up. Watch this. That's Claire Dyer, Dire Consequences, usually on at 0800 Greenwich Mean Time on a Tuesday and 5 p.m. on a Thursday. Though we might be increasing the frequency with which we broadcast simply because the reality is A lot of you are asking for her shows. Also, on behalf of the scheduling team, I owe Claire an apology. Last week, it got pretty short-staffed here at Unprecedented because I was trying to give people time off. 2026 is going to be a huge year for Unprecedented TV. More of that in the new year. And I think we actually ran some of the wrong shows. So sorry, Claire. Normal service will be resumed from tomorrow morning and for the next couple of weeks as well. Everything should be fine as people come back to work. But we are caring employers here. So do I apologize? Yes. Do I feel sorry? Nah, the team needed a break. We've been going great guns here. And credit to my team. Thank you very much for all of you who work on Unprecedented TV. Now, let's get back to the story. We're talking about Zelensky, about the fact that he's been seeing Donald Trump. And I want to look at options. What are the options for Vladimir Zelensky? And that's a difficult question. The mainstream here, the BBC, has been hedging its bets, saying some progress, but how much progress? I get the feeling that they're a little bit uncomfortable about this. Well, they might be, because they've called it wrong at just about every stage. The general mood music has been, if we give Vladimir Zelensky enough money, then he'll win. I've never thought that. And I've taken quite a lot of flack privately and publicly. I've even been hauled up in front of a group of people who wanted me to justify my stance. Well, it's justified by the fact and I look at the facts. And one of the facts is that this meeting, I believe, between Zelensky and Trump was nothing to do with Trump giving Zelensky more money or more weapons unless somebody buys them for him. It was about Trump saying to Zelensky behind closed doors, this is the best deal you're going to get. And in the meantime, of course, the war continues in a way which is quite awkward and very dangerous as well. And in my view, pointlessly, because they can't win. So I'm going to read some of your messages in a moment, but the options in my view are all predicated on this assumption. If this assumption is wrong, my friends, then everything I'm about to say is wrong as well. But the assumption I make is there is no military victory possible for Vladimir Zelensky. He's mucked it up. He may never have been able to win, but certainly his incompetence hasn't helped. A totally pointless incursion onto Russian territory in an area called Kursk, which cost tens of thousands of lives for no benefit. It's all been lost. The repeated attempt to defend undefendable positions, indefensible positions, where the Russians just carry on slaughtering. So my supposition is that Zelensky can't win. He can't win militarily. So what I'm going to say in a moment, just after I've read your messages, is what I think that entails and that implies in terms of what happens next. So, good morning, Columnids. Feel better soon, Warren, says Columnids. Yeah, I second that emotion. He's really not been well. It's food poisoning, by the way. It's a shame. Zelensky knows it's unwinnable, adds Columnids. Knew from the start. I'm not sure. I think Zelensky, because he doesn't know anything about military strategy or nothing significant, he might have actually thought he could win. Remember, his whole strategy was, I'll run this war. They've invaded. I'll run this war, and you take over. Come on, NATO, come and fight for me. He barefacedly said it. Now, hopefully, viewers here now can see how utterly balmy it is. There is no way that NATO's going to officially go and officially fight that war. We do know, of course, that quite a few Western and rather mysteriously trained soldiers from the West have died in Ukraine, causing quite a lot of awkwardness in terms of explanations afterwards. But they can't win. They just can't win. And I think Zelensky maybe didn't know from the start. Thorny issues, last comment, that's true. Thank you for reposting the stream. And a couple more here. Zelensky will have thorny issues once he's out of power. Well, he's pretty rich now, mysteriously rich, very, very mysteriously rich, from a former clown who has a relatively modest income as Ukrainian president. Where did that money come from? And Trump thinks Starmer's a clown. Yep, I agree. Meat grinder, it is so sad. It's just how much land they want to lose. That's the only question. I agree. I think that you're right, basically. So we're in a situation now where Trump and Zelensky met. They had their big meeting, the big chat, and they stood on the steps there. And this might answer your question, Colin. This is what they want. They want Luhansk, Donetsk, and the other two areas there. Donetsk not completely taken yet. You can see this is an interesting chart, actually. And they want that to be peacefully handed over. And Putin's argument, so let's get into the third part of what I wanted to do today. What are the options? Let me say up front, it's give the land, get the peace. Give the land, get the peace. And Vladimir Putin's been quite open about it. He said it in Alaska when he met Donald Trump. He said it since his extremely experienced and professional world statesman, Lavrov, who speaks on behalf of Vladimir Putin on international policy, has said it as well. So just give us the land. Well, take the land, or you can give us the land. Those are your two options. You have no other options. I believe them. I think that's true. And as a result of that, I think that we have to be very careful about what transpires from here. And by very careful, I mean Westerners, Starmer, von der Leyen in Brussels, all of those people have to be very careful, because their decisions could simply prolong the carnage. Won't change the outcome now. It'll prolong the carnage. So, once again, I've got 3 points to make on this. The first one is Zelensky should take the deal. And that means giving up land. That leads to a problem, which is my second point. We'll come to that in a minute. And that means that they get 20% columns. That's what I think that Ukraine has to give to Russia, that area. And that's got to be under Russian control. They're not likely to go for some kind of a free trade, free economic area. You might get a demilitarized zone, but most likely Russia would like to have that under Russian control. Now, I don't know if I'm right about that. I'm not 100% sure. But I am absolutely sure that Russia will keep fighting until it gets the land that it wants. So that would be my first of 3 points on this, really. The next point would be the problem for Zelensky. If Zelensky gives up land, you keep hearing all these Ukrainian politicians who say, oh, we can't give up land, it's not constitutional and so on. All right, then, just lose another 200,000, mainly men, and then lose the land anyway. Find a way. That's what I would say. Find a way. And once again, we could talk about the rights and wrongs of what caused this war. Doesn't help us much now, does it? And you get this big argument about, oh, well, this rewards aggression. Kind of. If you think that Russia's the aggressor and there's no other guilty party here. But as I've said repeatedly, and some of you argue about this, I respect your right to argue, but as I've said repeatedly, the problem started in 1990 when a man called James Baker, speaking for the American president, said, not 1 inch to the east. And by that, James Baker meant that NATO would not move 1 inch to the east if the Soviet Union dismantled itself and, for example, took Ukrainian-based nuclear missiles out of that country. Well, that was just a lie. It's been broken persistently for 35 years. And foolish people like Mark Rutte, who is the caretaker leader of NATO, I can't think of him as more than that, seem to ignore all that. They seem to think that NATO can do whatever it wants without consequences. For example, trying to create a ring of steel around Russia. Well, Russia warned everybody 11 years ago, said, we're going to not let this happen. And Vladimir Putin, particularly, said that. So on the second point, no, it's not the case that Russia is singularly responsible for the aggression. But even if you think they are, Volodymyr Zelensky has to accept defeat. There's no other way of putting it. He can tell his Ukrainian compadres that it's a weird victory of some sort, or he stopped the war. But he could have done that 4 years ago. And if It's said, I don't know this for sure, others are more confident, including Warren Thornton, that he was going to accept the peace, but Boris Johnson went there and told him not to. Well, that just shows, if that's true, it just shows how totally inexperienced, naive Vladimir Zelensky was to believe him, because there weren't any significant numbers of British lives being lost there, just probably millions of Ukrainian lives. So on this second issue, Zelensky has to accept defeat. And when people say, oh, well, you promised us victory, it's his problem, well, how he responds to that. But the honest answer would be, I didn't know what I was doing. And I thought that NATO would run in, because that's how inexperienced I was. And NATO didn't come in, and he should have known NATO wouldn't come in, because they didn't come in when Crimea was annexed by Russia either. Leads me to my third point, and it's back to the absolute disgusting deaths in well, are they disgusting? They're appalling, I think. Appalling. They're tragic deaths with all of this firepower in Ukraine. Zelensky has no military way out of this situation. And you get conversations about how many lives have been lost. We can't give up now. We can't disrespect the memory of the dead. Look at these things. I can't see how it's respectful to those who have already fallen to send thousands more to their deaths in the wake of the existing death toll. It's absolutely beyond me why anyone could think that arguing about, oh, well, we can't stop now because we're too far in, makes sense. It's the gambler's dilemma. The gambler's dilemma or paradox is, I've lost £10,000 at the roulette table, so I'll put another 10,000 in to try to win the original 10,000 back. Out of interest, recently, I went to watch, I'm not a big gambler, I went to watch people gambling in a casino, just out of interest. I didn't place a single bet myself when I was there. I'm not against the idea, I just don't really have a taste for it. And at all the tables, almost everyone lost almost everything. And I didn't ask them why they were doing it. I didn't ask them whether they thought they were going to win it all back or if they're getting some other kick out of it. But I bet you at least one person in that whole casino was thinking, well, I've lost 2,000, so I'll put another 1,000 in to try to win the original money back. It doesn't work like that. Casinos are tremendously profitable for a reason. Casinos make money because of the psychology of the gambler. Now, a few people are very good at it. It seems to me that gambling takes great patience. And if you do have patience and you know the statistics, you can probably win. But then you're not doing it for fun. You're doing it for essentially business purposes. Most people don't do that. Zelensky is doing it for neither fun nor business purposes. He's doing it in some political way, which, as far as I'm concerned, is all about propping up his own administration. I don't want to get too far into why Zelensky's making what I think are terrible decisions, but he is. And on this point, when people say to him, because of you, hundreds of thousands of people have died, or more likely, because of you, my son is dead, my husband's dead, my father's dead, maybe my sister's dead. How can you do a peace with Russia? The mature thing to say is, we miscalculated horrendously. We should have taken the peace. We should have given the land. Oh, but then you're negotiating with the aggressor. It's more complicated than that, Zelensky should say. But I don't think we're going to get that from him. If he was a true statesman, he would say to his people, we've got to stop the killing, not we've got to keep the killing in order to pretend that we can win. And those are really the difficult options that we're in here. Donald Trump is, whether you like him or not, he's a fighter. He had that iconic picture. You know, there we are. I think that sums him up. A man who is pretty fearless. He's just been shot. I think he genuinely was shot. I don't believe any conspiracy theories on this. I think he's genuinely bleeding, and he was 1 inch from being killed. Well, that sort of man is a whole lot more impressive than someone like him, Keir Starmer. And when Zelensky is told by Trump what to do, I think he needs to think about that before he thinks about what Starmer and the coalition of the willing is telling him. Which is to say, awkward as it may be, he's got two options. He either wins what he can from the deal, or he loses what Putin wants to take in the battleground. There are no other options. So let me conclude with this, my friends. And I really hope that Warren will be back soon. And as soon as he is, we'll get him on. It's a fast-moving situation. And Warren will definitely be most welcome to come on any day this week, if he's better. But I would say this in terms of humble advice. Oh, just before I go, Colin says some would be hiding under the table. Yeah. And once it's over, all the dirt on Zelensky will come out. I think you're right. And Ricky Sickles says, yes, Mr. Z will have to face the music from Ukraine people. Good to speak to you yesterday, Ricky. Good to have you here today. The time's agreeable for you. I do believe you're far away. Oh, and Ricky also says a demilitarized zone. That's a joint economic zone, neither Russian or Ukrainian, with joint investment destination. I'm not sure that Vladimir Putin will accept that. I think that he knows he can get what he wants militarily, so he doesn't really need to back down. When you've got a winning hand in your hand in cards, you don't have to go easy on the betting, do you? Because the others will either have to call you and lose or fold. But we'll see. That's something we'll come back to, Ricky. So my advice to Zelensky is this. Am I a military expert? Not really, no. But I seem to know a lot more about it than he does, than Zelensky does, or than he lets on. You need to accept the deal. You need to accept whatever Donald Trump gives you, because you are in no position to negotiate because of your catastrophic mismanagement of the war. Or maybe you've just been following instructions from the start. A lot of your countrymen and women are dead. Hundreds of billions of dollars have been wasted. And the coalition of the willing is, as I think Dr. Marcus Papadopoulos correctly calls it, coalition of the Wallies. I just don't think that Starmer and the German Chancellor and the French President and the President of the European Union, I don't think they have any credibility in this situation, whatever. So my appeal is simple. Stop the war, take the deal, end the killing. Will there be a period for humility? Yes, because all the people who have been egging Zelensky on to foolishly think he can win will have been proved wrong. They'll also bleat, oh, this is giving victory to the aggressor. Depends where you draw the starting point line. If you draw it in 1990, it's not that clear at all. And finally, if they say, oh, well, if we do a deal with Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine giving up the land and Russia getting it, the next stop will be Poland. Utter rubbish. Utter and total rubbish. And I'd be the first to come on there and admit if I'm wrong about this. I don't, and I've been criticized this, by the way, because I have Estonian heritage. Oh, you're betraying your Estonian countrymen. I don't think so. I think the line that Russia will draw is in Ukraine and not beyond. They're not going to invade and conquer the European Union. They're not going to sneak around Denmark and land in Scotland. These specific territorial ambitions are all related to Ukraine for those historical reasons I've touched on in this show. Only a fool would think that Russia could be beaten anyway. In all of the meetings that the Coalition of the Willing, what an ironic name, have had, all they've committed is money and some kind of a, I don't know how you describe it, impotence, I think, showing that they can't deliver what they claimed that they could. I'll conclude on this point. Donald Trump talks about deaths. Nobody else seems to. Zelensky talks about money and getting more money to wage a war, which nobody can seriously think he's going to win. And the bleating European Union and the United Kingdom are willing to send money so that Ukraine can preside over the continuous killing of men of fighting age, and some who are beyond fighting age, and some women too. Credit to those of you who understand the position that I've taken. If you disagree, I'll have an argument, I'll have a debate with you. I'm happy to do that. But my appeal to all of us is to not be fooled by the self-deluded nonsense we get from Western European politicians and British politicians. This war is over in all bar the shooting. The outcome is known. All we're deciding now is how many more people have to die in the meat grinder of Ukraine before we get to the inevitable outcome. Land handed over to Russia in one form or another. No NATO membership for Ukraine, and the denazification of Ukraine. Thanks so much for listening. Warren, get well soon. It would have been a better show if you'd been here, but we'll get you back as soon as possible. Do please carry on having a chat, and please like and subscribe to Unprecedented TV on YouTube. 2026 is going to be a huge year. Make sure you're there from the start. I'm Lembit Öpik. That was Lembit Öpik live on Unprecedented TV.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The return of the sausages.